Merry Christmas and welcome to Cooking with the Wombat. As you can see, we have the burrow decorated to celebrate the holidays. And when Christmas time is near, we also know that it's time for a gingerbread house, which we make every year from scratch here in the burrow. And I'm going to teach you how to do it and give you a few tips along the way. My first tip is you need a few days to do this. One day to mix the dough, one day to roll it out and bake it, then a day or so to let it kind of dry out and settle a little bit, and then you can assemble and decorate. And so today we are going to start with the dough. Well, before we start making the dough, I need to change out of my Christmas finery, and so for that we're going to use a little bit of Christmas magic. Well, that's better. Now I'm ready to get to work. I'm going to bring the camera in close and talk about what I'm doing as I do it, so you don't have to look at me for the whole time. Okay, 2 sticks of butter and 3/4 of a cup of firmly packed brown sugar. Now we're going to cream this, and by cream this doesn't mean mix it until it's incorporated. This means mix it until it's light and fluffy. And I almost think this is something that can't be overdone. And I think it's a common mistake that people make who are inexperienced in baking. But you want to really give this a good spin. All right, this is now light and fluffy. As you can see, it's the butter's lost a lot of its color because it's got a lot of air whipped into it. Light and fluffy, that's how we like it. All right, I'm gonna push this down the side, 250 grams of molasses. So since I am measuring by weight, I do wanna make sure I get it all in there. And we're gonna mix this on low. And this, we don't need to really beat it to death. We just wanna kind of mix it together. Get it moving a little bit. I want it to be fully mixed. Now, I have 5 1/4 cups or 630 grams of all-purpose flour. Into that, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of baking soda, half a teaspoon of ground cloves, a teaspoon of salt. I'm using Himalayan pink. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And we are also, the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of ginger, but I like ginger, and I find that most gingerbread isn't quite snappy enough for my taste. So I'm gonna add about half a jar. Sometimes I add a whole jar. It can take a lot before it gets overpowered. Now I like to whisk this together till it's all even and incorporated. Good substitute for sifting the flour to kind of break up any clumps that are in the flour, which, as discussed, I weighed 630 grams, which is also 5 1/4 cups. And we're going to incorporate this flour really slowly, just little by little bits. If you try and pour it all in there at once, what'll happen is it'll start to blow flour all over your kitchen, which is not what you want. Now you can do this by hand too, but it's tough sledding, believe me. A lot of work. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And before we roll it out, we've got to put it in the refrigerator for a few hours. They say preferably overnight. I'm gonna make another load of this because you can make the house with 1 batch of this dough, but if you're not really careful, you'll run out of gingerbread, which is not what you want to have happen. So I'm going to make another batch of this too, which I'm not going to bore you with. All right, now what we do here in the burrow is you want to kind of spread this out. It's easiest if you spread it out and make it kind of as rectangular as you can. You don't need to roll it when it's sticky like this. This is something I've learned from some trial and error and making a lot of mistakes. So I'm gonna get I got a piece of parchment paper, get another piece of parchment paper, and I'm gonna kind of smooth this thing out, try and make it as flat as I can. The dough won't really stick to it, so you can, it takes as much as possible, it takes the shape of the parchment paper. And then that way when we put it in the refrigerator and start to chill it, we'll have a nice piece here that's not perfectly flat, but it's flat enough that in an oblong shape so that when you roll it out, because it's a lot of work, so maybe it's about, I don't know, half an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch thick, and we're gonna let it sit overnight and come back to it. Do this twice, and then come back, and I'll finish the cutting and baking part tomorrow. Okay, in our last segment I told you to make 2 batches of dough, but you don't really need 2 batches of dough. 1 batch of dough will do just fine if you do a simpler house shown here. Roof pieces are 10 inches by 5 inches. The pointy pieces are 9 inches tall by 6 inches wide by 5 inches to where the roof starts. And you gotta have that point right in the middle. Sides are 9 inches by 5 inches. I have some help from little baby Yoda, also known as Grogu, and we're gonna go a little deeper. We're gonna do some chimneys, and we're gonna do a little front porch and the front porch overhang, and we're gonna make it a little bit more complicated. For that, we need 2 batches, but if you just wanna do this guy, the basic, 1 batch will be more than enough. And if you're gonna do 2, bring Grogu. Turn on. All right, this is 1 recipe. I told you to make 2, but I also told you probably only need 1 if you're doing the simple version. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this in half right now. I'm gonna put this other half back in the ice box and keep it nice and cold while we're rolling out the dough for this one. All right, let's roll this out. You know, they say you want it to be about a ½ an inch thick, but that's pretty thick. To probably go with a little bit thinner and really cold. So this is gonna take me a little while, so bear with me. All right, now I like to use a pizza dough or pizza cutter, kind of cut these pieces, cut them clean. I kind of flaked out here because ideally you would have big pieces of dough that you could spread out, because you can roll this a couple times and it'll still be of a good quality, but you don't want to keep rolling it and balling it up and rolling it again and again and again, or eventually it won't be so hot. So this is one side of the house. And what I like to do, which will make your life an awful lot easier, and it's especially easier if you roll the dough into big giant pieces and cut them out individually with a little bit of space, is do this, which makes it much easier to get a big piece of gingerbread onto a baking tray. All right, so we cut 1 piece here, and we took the remnants of our dough, rolled out another piece, had to sprinkle a little flour on it to keep it from sticking. And now we have 2 that are roughly the same. These are for the gabled sides of the house. Now we're gonna do the walls and the roofs and things like that. All right, here's a side wall, 5 inches by 9 inches. We're gonna do 2 of these. They don't have to be absolutely perfect. You can trim them after the gingerbread cooks, which put it on my cookie sheet, and I'm gonna roll these remnants out and make another sidewall. So we have these wide roof sides, and then we have the narrow roof sides with the points on them, and they're ready to go in the oven. I have a convection oven, which is 325, which is what I use. You can also use 350, and you wanna cook them kind of till they're golden brown, and I'll give you a time in a minute. This is the roof. If you're doing a simple gingerbread house, you're gonna do 2 of these. You can ignore me after this. I'm gonna make a bunch of other pieces. But do 2 of these if you're gonna do a simple house. And if you wanna do something that's more complicated, send me an email or something and I'll give you that. But I'm gonna cut the other pieces, the chimney and the front porch and all that stuff. And this is 1/2 of my roof, but your roof is gonna be 2 of these. Keep it simple. Okay, if you're doing the simple house, you're gonna do 2 of these, which are 5 by 10s. I'm doing a 5 by 10 and a 6 by 10, but don't worry about that. I'm gonna just show you the simple way, but we're gonna also show you the complicated way. Okay, here are the first pieces. These are right fresh out of the oven. You can see like my finger still makes a little divot in the dough. I'm gonna let them cool, and if they're not firm enough and they feel weak or moist or something like that, I will put them back in the oven at a low temperature, like 200, and let them sit there for an hour and dry out like a piece of dry toast, which will make it a lot easier to assemble. You know, if they're too soft, you know, the whole thing can collapse. And here's another Wombat tip. Another Wombat tip is, do not do this on a rainy day. Humidity is okay to an extent, but if it's raining and it's really humid, this won't work, and when you try and put it together with the royal icing won't work and the whole thing will collapse. Oh no, these are the side pieces on the house. You can see they're kind of lopsided. Don't worry about that. If we have to cut them, we can cut them and straighten them out. All right, this is the chimney piece. All right, folks, we're gonna make royal icing. We're getting ready to glue this gingerbread house together. So I got 5 1/4 cups of confectioner's sugar. And I have a 1/2 cup of egg whites, and I highly recommend that you go to Publix and just get some egg whites rather than trying to separate the egg whites out. Some of these recipes call for cream of tartar, but I don't like it because I don't like the way it tastes. I do like the way vanilla tastes, so I add vanilla to it. So you can see here, all that powdered sugar is gone. We might need to add a little bit more. I'm not sure yet, but what I'm gonna do is turn this thing up high. Okay, these are the sides of the house. This is gonna be really scary, and you know what? It might break, because sometimes it does break, and I've had them break before, and that's okay. But it's not so bad to just get them kind of smooth. Gingerbread, you can see how it kind of, you know, it tends not to be so brittle because it's got this molasses in it. And if we have sides that are kind of straight, and they don't have to be perfect because we can fix problems with this royal icing that we have, but we can try and get them kind of close to the same size. So these are my pieces that are 9 inches by 5 inches. And as you can see, they're not quite perfect, but I think they're perfect enough for us to start working with them. This are the sides of the house, kind of the same thing. We want to just kind of see if we can square them up a little bit so they're even and clean. And you can eat some of this too. Delicious. All right, so I got a big cutting board here. You want a big one. And I've covered it with foil. This is another Wombat tip. If you don't put foil on it, it is really difficult to clean. But if you put foil on it, all that royal frosting, icing, even though it's hard as cement, will just peel right off when you take the foil off. So I've got a pastry tube here with like a little decorative nib, which is looking pretty good. It's kind of sticky and fluffy, which is good, what we want. All right, so we have our royal icing here, and this stuff is like, it's been whipping for about 5 or 6 minutes. So you want to get your royal icing in this pastry bag. Not easy, it's gonna make a humongous mess. That's why the kids love this. They love this trick, it's a good trick. I want to fill this thing up as much as we can. All right, that's probably enough for now. All right, now we're gonna start assembling our gingerbread house. So look, so we got this royal icing in this pastry bag, kind of twist it up, so now we can see, look, we're ready to kind of put it together. I'm gonna take one side, I'm gonna take one end and one side over here. Okay, we're gonna start by putting a line of icing along here. So I'm gonna put some along the bottom. This is gonna help it stick at the bottom. And then I'm gonna do it like this so that I have a sort of like a front yard for the house. Let me stick it together like this. Voila. And I will usually try and enforce it a little bit over here with another row of this royal icing, and I'll put some on the inside too, because this part is where you want to get this thing really nice and stable so that it's sturdy. And when this stuff dries, I'm telling you, it's gonna be like, it is like cement when it dries. So I'm gonna put another tube of it like this, another tube of it along here, and then we're gonna stand this piece up. And you might need to wait, you might need to do this in stages, make this work right. And you wanna let it dry until it's good and firm. The fourth side on. And if you're just doing a simple house, I'm gonna do one that's a little bit more complicated just for show, just because I'm gonna show off. But if you're doing a simple house, all you have to do is do this part and then put the roof on, which we've done many times, because it's a lot easier than doing the chimney and the front porch and all that other stuff I'm gonna do. This is the basic foundation of our house. All right, now we're gonna put the front roof on. More of my beloved royal icing along here. Good thick load of it. Get it good and thick application. Look at this, it's all over my hands now. I'm lame at using a pastry tube. And then we're gonna just place it here like this. Okay, now I'm doing the trickiest part of this whole operation, which is the back roof. And it's tricky because it's big and it can weigh a lot, and sometimes it'll slide right off the back or it'll collapse or something else. And I've had all of these things happen. So, a seasoned veteran of the gingerbread wars, okay? So it'll sit here and it'll fit, and it looks like it fits. One thing that a lot of, that is highly recommended by gingerbread people in the know is to maybe find like a big can or something and use this to prop up the back side of the roof, kind of support it from underneath. So I'm gonna go find a can and just stick it up under here, and we'll kind of leave it there. You wanna leave it there until it really dries. And then get as much candy as you possibly can and load it up with candy. All right, so it's day 4. This is our gingerbread house. This is pre-decorating. Decorate the pieces first and then build it. But it's hard to do that when you got little kids, and we're gonna have a bunch of little kids, and we're gonna have more candy than you could possibly imagine, and a couple more batches of royal icing. And we're just gonna load up this cutting board and house with as much sugar and color as we possibly can. All right. If you really want to go nuts, you could try something like this for making a pond. I actually had some extras, so I made a few of them in case something gets messed up or somebody touches it, which will wreck it. So this is half a cup of corn syrup and a cup of sugar in a saucepan, and heat it at medium-low, stir it until it starts to boil, and then let it boil until it reaches a temperature of between 290 and 300, which is like a hard candy stage. Kind of has a texture of a Jolly Rancher, a little bit harder than a Jolly Rancher, you know, really like a hard candy. And then pour it. And I did a few of them just because I was a little worried that I might screw something up, but in any event, that looks pretty good, so we'll just leave it. Okay, here we are. We're outside at the Wombat Burrow. We spent probably $100 on candy today, and we actually found the famous Necco wafers, which I believe were out of business for a while. I don't know if these are left over from before they went out of business, or if it's been revived. And we have some sugar things. Everything on this thing's edible. My favorite, some licorice. These are some strange looking peanut butter cups that look like poops. And we, this year, got wise and are doing it outside so that the kids can put candy all over it. We can make a humongous mess if we want, and then we will just simply hose off the patio. And this is the setting for the event to come. This is the final product once again. I didn't have a chance to shoot a proper outro when all the kids were here, but here it is. As you can see, they loaded up with so much candy that it just pretty much looks like a candy pile, but that's the whole point, just to have a good time. That's what we do here in the burrow. We eat, we have fun, we cook, and we don't want to get too precious and fancy. We just want to have a good old Wombat time, Wombat style. So like, share, subscribe, and I got some more videos coming your way soon.